Hi, I'm Jane Farnham from Great British Speakers, and I'm here today chatting to the amazing high performance leadership and teamwork speaker, Caspar Craven. Hi, Caspar.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. You look dapper today, so I'm really looking forward to finding out more about you because for anybody who doesn't know, you do have a great backstory in terms of personal adventure and entrepreneurship that gets you to, have a really great story to tell. So tell me about your life prior to speaking.
So prior to speaking, I've done a whole bunch of different stuff. I've worked in large companies, I've worked in small companies, but I think the thing that generates most interest is that in amongst all of that, I've managed to find the time to sail twice around the world. The first time competitively, and then the second time with my family, our wife and our three kids under the age of 10. So a whole mixture of different experiences. So entrepreneurial and adventure, and whole mix of different things.
Tell me about that journey. Three children on a sailboat, under 10.
Yeah.
What were the highs and what were the lows? Because
Yeah.
that is just an adventure, isn't it? I bet it's something they'll never forget and you'll never forget.
Yes, no, it was definitely, as I like to say, it was a big bold goal. Most people think I'm a little bit crazy, by the way, to go and do that, which I understand. So look, what were the highs and the lows? I think that the highs were that whole notion of setting something that everybody else says is impossible and saying, okay, how are we going to go and do this? How are we going to go and tackle this challenge? And then on the back of that is actually getting to go and spend time with our kids, going experiencing the world, doing different things. And just really taking ourselves out of our comfort zone to do something different, unusual. And so time with the kids and grappling with the many challenges and things that brought up. And then the lows, probably spending a huge amount of time with my kids and dealing with sort of, we've all done, although those with the kids, all done a little bit of homeschooling during COVID and all that sort of stuff. Doing that for 2 years, that was quite tricky. That was a bit challenging. Just figuring out how do you sort of, get on with life with doing all those sorts of things. So, yeah.
Well, the life lessons they would have learned were phenomenal. And you know what? What you learn is, as you go through parenthood, you realize you're never going to get that time back. They grow up so quickly. I know that's a bit of a cliche thing to say. But I do have to ask you one thing. What was your most favorite stop over along the
Stop.
way? Yeah, because you went around the world. Yeah, I'm sure there's a route that you took, but was there a place that you that was just amazing?
There were several places. The one that jumps to my mind is this tiny little island in the middle of the Indian Ocean called Cocos Keeling, and it's the quintessential sort of beautiful desert island, sort of palm trees and crystal blue seas. And there's not much there. There's hardly any shops there, and pretty much like in paradise in the sort of far-flung parts of the world. So it's lots of swimming, diving, snorkeling, and swimming with turtles and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool.
Oh God, it sounds idyllic. There are places like that still exist.
I'd say
home. Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, sort of being in a sort of back in the UK and sort of cracking on with normal life. That seems like a long way away now. So,
well, I tell you what, I've actually been in the sea this morning, and it's nothing like that. Yes, I only lasted 2 minutes, but I actually did it. So yes, cold water swimming is therapy.
I always challenge people to take up cold showers. So it's like you're my hero because I don't do the cold water swimming. I do the cold water showers. So it's amazing.
Yeah, I do that most days, but yeah, it didn't help with getting into that water this morning, let me tell you. So you came back from your travels, and is that when you got into speaking?
It is. So we ended up staying on the boat to San Francisco. We're splitting our time between the States and the UK, and I got asked to do an after dinner talk, only about 20 minutes. And I remember just having this overwhelming reaction from people afterwards as I was sharing some of the insights, some of the things that we learned. And people basically saying, I'm going to go and do something different. I'm going to go and approach things differently. I'm going to think about things differently. So that whole notion of being thought-provoking and challenging and just getting that feedback, it just stopped me in my tracks. And I realized that actually using the power of stories, that you can sort of, make a positive difference to other people's worlds. And I realized that actually all the work that I'd done up until then, it just didn't compare to the feeling that gave me. So that was the point. I said, actually, this is all I want to do for the next 25 years, is to use the power of story, power of insights to make a positive difference to other people. So that whole thought-provoking thing and different ways of thinking about things. So that was basically where it all started from, sort of doing a 20-minute after dinner talk. So
I love it when things slot into place and come together from not necessarily something that you plan to do. It almost feels like it's predestined, almost, that you follow a certain path. But obviously we've seen huge amounts of change over the last 2 years. So have you had to adapt your talks over recently with everything that's gone on?
Yeah, so my talks, I don't really talk about sailing these days. So my whole my whole theme is all around big bold goals, and you can see where the theme comes from the past and so on. But over the last 7 years, I've spent a huge amount of time doing sort of deep dive research into sort of some of the most successful leaders on the planet and saying, okay, what have they done differently to go and achieve their audacious goals? How do they think as a leader? What's the teamwork that they apply? So I take my experiences and I say, okay, what are other people doing? And so all the talks that I'm doing now are all around leadership, teamwork, and going after these massive goals. And I think, that's what I'm really seeing is what people are most interested in, because we live in a very disrupted world these days. And, doing what we used to do is not going to get us any further forward. One of my favorite sayings is that you can't navigate a new world with an old chart. And I think that's what an awful lot of organizations and businesses are doing. So my interest is sort of saying, okay, well, how can I provide some thought-provoking ideas around that? And how do we lead ourselves? How do we lead others to go and do that? So that's really where it sort of ends up being at the moment. So
when you do agree to do a speaking engagement, you obviously offer an opportunity to speak with the client. And is that when you decide, how do you decide what they need? Is there any sort of, is it just from chatting to them and finding out what they're missing, what they're lacking?
Yeah, so I mean, like every event, every set of leaders, they've got all clearly a bunch of things going on, a bunch of challenges, bunch of priorities. And I always think that when as a speaker, when you step into somebody else's world, they're not really interested in you. They're interested in their own problems, which is right, and that's how it should be. So therefore, for me, it's imperative to understand what are the things that they're facing, and then I say, okay, well, I've got some different ways to think about doing that, some thought-provoking ways, and there's some stories and there's some insights. So literally every single thing is tailored to each client, to each organization, and it totally depends on what's going on in their world and their issues. So that's where it has to begin and end. So
okay, then, and talking about the realities of speaking, what frustrates you?
So the most frustrating thing that I've found as a speaker is that you get 45 minutes, an hour to go in and speak to an organization, and you go and share insights, ideas, stories. And you can see, and you see in the feedback, that it's really thought-provoking, and it gets people thinking about how they can do things differently. And one of my biggest frustrations is then that sort of 6 months later, a year later, how much that stuff is actually being actioned. So actually, over the last few years, we've been building a whole team, basically saying, actually, we'll come in and help you run programs and so on to make sure those ideas embed. So actually, my core frustration has been making these ideas stick. I think there's so much stuff in this world where people are sort of saying, it's the same old, same old. We've heard all these different things before. And so it's like, well, okay, let's have some thought-provoking stuff and then find ways to make it stick. So that's really the my past frustration, but what I'm working very hard to try and address. So that's probably been the main one. So
yeah, because it's all very well sort of sitting and chatting to somebody for a team of people for an hour, but and inspire people and motivate people, but kind of sometimes it's difficult to kind of move things to the next level where they need to go. So that's great that you offer that. That it's almost like retraining and giving people targets and challenges to overcome and just thinking differently. I mean, thinking, so what is it? This first sign, what is it? The sign of stupidity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Yeah. It just doesn't happen.
Absolutely. I think the other thing that's associated with that is this whole thing about relevancy as well. Like if someone's going to go and do something, they have to be able to relate to it. And it's like, okay, well, what can I understand about this? How relevant is this to my situation? So it's getting that, because I think that's the first stage. Because if you don't have that relevancy, then it's quite hard to try and make it stick. And then, as you said, it's that thing about saying, okay, what am I actually going to do differently with this? So, so I always give people challenges, just small things, just to start them on the journey, like cold showers, by the way. So it's...
little baby steps, isn't it? 15 seconds a day, and then 20 seconds, and then and gradually it's habits, and it's habit forming and creating new patterns and
absolutely
pathways.
Well, and one of the other things actually is I mean, so much of the stuff around sort of leadership teamwork, it all boils down to the conversations that we have with the people around us. It's how we think, and then what are those conversations. So one of the things that I was talking about is this notion of this thing called past, present, future. So this question that I developed actually at home, and it came out of the whole notion that I would say to my wife, let's go and do this in the future. And she would say, but we've always done it this way in the past. And it's like, I don't know how many organizations I've come across where people look at things differently. So I asked this question of 100% of your time, energy, and focus, what percentage goes to the past, the present, and the future? And everyone's always got different answers. And so one of the things I always encourage people to do is to go and have a conversation with someone else around that, and to understand your own perspective and to understand somebody else's perspective. And it's in that dialogue, it's in that interaction that we start to generate more insights. Because if you're just holding it in your head on your own, you're not going to get that far with it. But when you start debating it and grappling with those ideas with other people, then I think that really starts to unlock interesting insights.
And then things happen. So you've taken this all into another sphere with big, bold goals. Tell me what's on offer there.
So Big Bold actually came out of a book. Hang on a second. I wrote, I've got a copy here. Be More Human.
Copy next to you.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to have a copy next to you. So it came out of this book here. And for me, that was the rethink about high performance teamwork. And I think one of the core notions of that is we're all building two teams, a home team and a work team. And it's exactly the same skills that we need to thrive in both areas. And actually, I developed most of my skills at home and then took them into the workplace, such as doing values at home, creating a mission at home, creating our story at home, and so on. And so it's taking those ideas and then helping organizations to go and embed those. So one of the programs we run is called the Leadership Experience, which is either a half day or a full day program, where it's like, okay, we're going to take some stories, we're going to get really practical and get you thinking about these different things and the digital follow-ups on that go on after that. But again, it's just starting to plant the seeds and the ideas, and then get people talking about it, thinking about it, taking the ideas home, and just finding lots of different ways to try and make it stick, rather than just being, oh, that was an interesting set of stories.
And what are other topics that are quite popular and resonating with audiences these days?
So a lot of stuff around teamwork. Every organization that I speak to right now, they're facing a ton of challenges, right? And how do we get our employees engaged? How do we deal with cost of living crisis, inflation? We're being disrupted by new competitors coming into our marketplaces. So how do we deal with those challenges? How do we become more resilient? How do we become more agile to go and deal with those things that we're facing? So it's working with any of those things, but the core does come down to the leadership, the teamwork, and the resilience, and how do we deal with that? So I've been working with Johnson & Johnson recently, who are spinning out their consumer division to a new company called Kenvue. So a lot of work there was around how do you think as a leader, and how do we develop that leadership mindset and get that running through the organization. So again, it's being thought-provoking, it's being challenging, and presenting different ideas to be able to deal with the challenges in front of us.
Yeah, and all, the resilience and leadership skills, they're things that will take you through, regardless of what's going on, whether it's, the economy is doing well, economy is doing bad, or there's a war, or there's a pandemic. All those things happen, need to happen for a successful business at any one time, really. So it's, they're the core subjects, aren't they, that you keep on coming back to, really. It's if you haven't got those in place, then do you have a successful business?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I mean, you know what? Basically it comes down to people, doesn't it? And you know, one of the things that I realized, and particularly in writing the book, Be More Human, doing the research and speaking to amazing leaders around the world for that, is that the more I seem to understand humans, the better I think we seem to do at business. And there's a neuroscientist, Anthony Damasio, and he has a lovely saying that we're not thinking creatures who feel, we're feeling creatures who think. And understanding what's going on, that emotional layer underneath it all, because all the logic follows after that. And so it's this notion about really understanding what's driving the different people in your team. People need to do things for their reasons, not your reasons. So it's finding those areas. And that's what I find incredibly fascinating, is being able to unlock those keys so that we can then go and achieve all the things we want to go and do, find the fulfillment, and you know, hit our big bold goals. So.
And is that what gives you the biggest buzz about speaking?
You know what gives me the biggest buzz is just hearing the feedback. People are going to go and do things differently. I did an event 2 weeks ago for an association, and I had the briefing call with the chair of the association. She said, "Do you know why we booked you?" So I was like, "No, I've got no idea." She said, "You probably don't remember, but 4 years ago you ran a workshop for 15 CEOs, and she said you changed lives that day." And it was just like, oh my God, I'm just like, as I say that now, I'm sort of getting tingles. And it's just sort of, it's that thing there of making a difference to other people's lives by being thought-provoking and giving people things they can actually do stuff with.
Well, it's been absolutely a pleasure to talk to you this morning, Caspar. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. It's been lovely to chat to you too.
And if you'd like to book Caspar to come and help you with leadership, empowerment, change, motivation, then simply contact myself or Steve at Great British Speakers on 01753 439 289, or you can email bookings@greatbritishtalent.com. Lovely.